Three words for you. Give him time. Mauricio Pochettino has overseen his Chelsea side beat Tottenham yet again, this time exploiting them through a number of different ways, and ways in which we're going to be talking about right now. Chelsea exploited Tottenham to no end in this game, and one of the major ways that they did that was through the blocking of passes through the centre of the pitch. Tottenham like to use their ball progressors in the likes of Bissouma, in the likes of Papamatar, picking up positions further up the pitch and then breaking those half spaces. But what happens if those half spaces aren't there? Well, that's exactly what Chelsea did so well. This is Madueke and this is Mudryk, and the condensing of the pitch just from a width perspective was extremely useful in stopping Spurs' progression through the centre. It forces them out wide, and this is what Chelsea did so well against Manchester City and Liverpool, stopping that progression through the centre of the pitch, essentially nullifying a number of different players. Maddison didn't play in this game, but he would have been nullified as well, and he was later on in the second half. Kulusevski couldn't find some space, and in fact he drops out a little bit. You've got Bissouma, who's being marked by essentially three Chelsea players. The aggression from a number of the players is extremely useful from Chelsea. Here you've got Conor Gallagher making that press, but at times you had Caicedo, at times you had Mudryk. It's really important to make sure that you combine that real condensing of the pitch with the aggression from the midfield, and that's exactly what Chelsea did so well. So Jackson is currently being aggressive onto Romero. This forces his hand and makes him play a pass to Papamatar. Now, instead of Sarr taking the ball and making a safe pass, he instead tries to play it through to Bissouma. But it's the pass from Romero to Sarr that gives the trigger for Gallagher to start pressing, and you'll see that in the next image. When Papamatar receives the ball, it's Gallagher's turn to then start pressing. Now, Papamatar has the option to either play that pass into Bissouma, he could recycle it back towards Romero, but that's a bit dangerous, or he could try and find Mickey van der Ven towards a more safer slot in the centre of the park. He doesn't decide to do this, and instead he tries to find Yves Bissouma. This ends up being intercepted by Conor Gallagher, who is then able to recover possession and pass it over to Mykhailo Mudryk to allow the break. Now, a couple of things that are really impressive with this. Number one is the width of the pitch. The width between the two wingers, the condensing of the space is so imperative to make this work. It means that Gallagher has less time or less distance to need to run to be able to intercept something, and at the same time, because of the closeness of the players, it means that a second ball is more likely to be picked up by a Chelsea player. It's really, really well worked. Combine that with the high line that Tottenham are currently playing. Here is Mickey van der Ven on the last line, close to the halfway line. It means that Chelsea are then able to break. And they break with Cole Palmer, they break with Jackson going down the wing, and we can see this as it progresses. Once it progresses, we can see Jackson is on Romero, we can see Cole Palmer is onto Mickey van der Ven, and all of a sudden you've got a 2 versus 2, something that Tottenham definitely don't want. But it was these kind of situations that opened themselves up on numerous occasions. Mudryk plays the ball with the outside of his foot round to Jackson, and it becomes a very, very good chance. It ends up getting saved. But I think the high line from Tottenham was continuously exploited by Chelsea, and they did that by closing down the space, making sure that the space was condensed in the pitch, and made it difficult for Tottenham to play their game through the centre. Then we can talk about a number of different avenues and the way they exploited that high line. So Mykhailo Mudryk is currently on the ball here. He's going to play it over the top, switching the play to the other side of the pitch. But I want to mention really quickly the role of Marc Cucurella here. Since his big money move from Brighton, he's received quite a lot of criticism, and he put in a star performance in this game. Just some of his numbers were brilliant. 2 clearances in the game, 4 interceptions, 4 tackles, and he actually won 9 out of his 9 ground duels. Combine that with his new position when Chelsea are in possession, and you've got a player there. We take a look at the average positions, and we can see that Cucurella isn't exactly close to this left-hand side. He drifts infield a little bit when Chelsea are in possession, and that makes a massive difference. A lot of football is about overloads. It's about creating space, creating the ability to be able to drive through, and you do that through overloading one side of the pitch or one particular area. And this is where Cucurella's movement from left back into midfield when Chelsea are in possession has such an impact. Gallagher and Caicedo are the 2 holding midfielders. They operate in a double pivot, and that's absolutely fine. But in possession going forwards, to give them a little bit more attacking intent, give them a bit more intensity, you kind of need Gallagher to be in and around this area. And the same goes for Palmer. Palmer needs to be in and around this area, and what this does is occupy Papamatissar and Yves Bissouma. But they can't do that if Gallagher is going to still operate in that double pivot and still be able to play the possession through the side. So what ends up happening is that Gallagher pushes forwards, Cucurella then moves into midfield next to Caicedo, and it just gives Caicedo, number one, another passing lane, gives him another option, it gives Palmer an option to be able to be free, it gives Gallagher an option, and all of a sudden the passing lanes that you've got are so much more open. There are so many more of them, and it means that Chelsea have just a little bit more attacking intensity going forwards. You've got Cucurella being able to be an extra pivot for Caicedo. You've got Caicedo having the option of finding these two, and just adding that extra player into midfield gives the license for Gallagher to move forwards to create runs in beyond. Gives Palmer a bit more space because he's not the only player being marked, and that's what Gallagher does. It just takes away some of the attention from Cole Palmer and gives him a little extra space. All of a sudden, Papamatissar drops a little bit deeper because of the runs of Jackson and beyond. You've got Gallagher making runs as well, taking Bissouma, and then you've got space for Palmer to move into that's a little bit more central. It gives him the option to be able to play through the balls into the wings and slide them through in between the Tottenham defenders. It seems like a normal and sensible tactic that's a little bit easy, but it's far from it. Cucurella needs to make sure that he is aware to a number of situations, and if he's not aware, Chelsea gets seriously punished. It's through this and through the utilisation in possession, with Cucurella following on as we've seen him do a couple of times, that allows Chelsea to be that little bit more dynamic going forwards. The ball gets carried over to the other side of the pitch, and when we're talking about the high line, just look at this. Look at how high this line is. I mean, the amount of space in beyond for Chelsea to just try and exploit is incredible. Now you've got Nicholas Jackson here close, and you've got the run on the other side, and again it's almost a 2v2. This play progresses, but it doesn't really materialise into anything major. But just look at the space that Jackson has to run into. Look at the space that could be found through Madueke. And then, just as an afterthought, look at Marc Cucurella through the centre of the pitch, bursting through to try and make an extra run. It's this dynamism from Chelsea that allowed them to turn Tottenham and then exploit the space in behind. Let's talk about the goal now, because once again, Tottenham have been exploited from a set piece, this time through a couple of different areas. I've got to say that the setup from Tottenham is really poor to begin with. So you have Mickey van der Ven here, you have Richarlison, you have Romero, three of your tallest players and probably the most aggressive in the air. And they are markings only. That's fine towards the centre of the goal. You want to make sure that you're able to stop the crosses coming into the middle of the pitch. I understand that, but you need to adapt yourself to different scenarios, and this is what Chelsea did really well. I thought that they really isolated a good part of this game, and I think they looked at the way that Tottenham tried to defend against Arsenal. Arsenal have done this a number of times, and that's load players towards the back end or towards the back post, moving them then centrally late on to be able to unsettle a number of defending players. What this ends up doing is, because they can't mark them, because they want to mark zonally, it means that the actual attacking players have a lot of freedom, they have a lot of aggression in them. And when you see this, when you see Chalobah centre-back, when you see Badiashile centre-back, when you see Marc Cucurella, admittedly he's not going to get the header, but he does play a vital role in this. When you see three Chelsea players pinning off to the back post, you must think that something is up. But no one in this Tottenham defence does anything. And we saw this against Arsenal. Their lack of leadership at times through set pieces was seriously exploited. Twice by Arsenal, and now here once by Chelsea. I thought it was really well worked by Chelsea. The ball gets whipped in, and then all of a sudden you've got a mismatch. First of all, you've got Marc Cucurella holding on to Brennan Johnson, who can't backtrack. You've then got Chalobah, and I want to highlight Chalobah right here. Look at this. He's already on the move. The ball is about to come in. He's already on the move. He's going to sprint in. And it really needs to be said that an aggressive sprinting run allows you to generate momentum. And once you generate momentum, you've already got a better chance of getting that header on target. So the ball gets crossed in. and you've got one centre-back, two centre-backs completely free at the back post. Now you can't see that, but I'll highlight that for you right here. So you've got both of these players in correlation with the rest of the Tottenham team. I mean, Van der Ven has no one to mark, Richarlison has no one to mark, and Romero has his hands full. The ball is, or the player here in Marc Cucurella is blocking off Brennan Johnson. It's not a foul, I don't think. I just think he blocks him off. And you've got two Chelsea centre-backs running onto the cross. Now, obviously, Chalobah ends up scoring. It's a brilliantly worked header. It goes into the top right-hand corner of the goal, and it's fantastic. But again, Chelsea have exploited Tottenham once more. Now, tactics make up football a lot of the time, and yes, it's really interesting to talk about where players were and how the tactics evolved, but at the end of the day, you've got to earn the right to play the game, and that's exactly what Chelsea did. I thought they dominated Tottenham, but that's because they seemed to want it more. 2.17 expected goals compared to 1.65, don't get me wrong, Tottenham had their chances, but Chelsea had more shots on target. Tottenham had more shots, but they didn't do enough with it. I thought they were quite wasteful, and what was a really telltale sign for me were the duels. Now we can see here that Chelsea had 63 duels won compared to 44. That's nearly 20 extra duels. They also won more aerials, they had more tackles, they had more clearances. They just seemed to want it a little bit more, and that's quite a damning thing for this Tottenham side, who should be playing free-flowing football, going for Champions League under Ange Postecoglou. Something isn't quite right there, and Chelsea seriously exploited Tottenham, not only from a tactical point of view, but also from an effort point of view. I thought Chelsea were brilliant, and if they continue with this vein of form under Mauricio Pochettino, it's a bright, bright future ahead.